Are schools teaching 50-year-old science? Some say the E in education should stand for engineering. Tonight, we get schooled about initiatives to provide 21st century learning for our children. This is What Matters. Good evening, I'm Kathy Lewis. Tonight on What Matters, we tackle a subject that, quite frankly, isn't at the top of the news headlines, but has tremendous implications for our future. It's a nagging concern that our science and technology education just isn't measuring up and is missing at least one key component. Now, when most of us were in school, we took math and science, but is that enough for a 21st century world? Well, there's a growing sense that it isn't. And one of the educational strategies that's been developed to address the deficits is called STEM, Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math Education. We'll consider the issue tonight with Jim Batterson, who's a former NASA engineer who was the senior advisor to the Commonwealth for STEM initiatives under the Kaine administration. Also with us is Lally, who is the chair emeritus of the Hampton Roads Technology Council. Welcome, and thanks to both of you for being with us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
Boy, this is it's a little bit complex and so critically important. So we'll take this half hour to try to really walk people through it. Jim Batterson, I think a lot of us are familiar with the sort of the bookends of that STEM word. We know about science and we know about math, and there's certainly issues there. But you say we're really missing out on the two words in the middle.
Yes, Kathy. The STEM education answers one of the issues we've had come up in the last 10 or 15 years. Particularly the National Governors Association had a report out on the importance of innovation in competing worldwide in the global environment. And the world is flat. Again, it's global competition, and innovation is the key. Innovation is the child of engineering, not of science and math. So there is a move toward this idea of STEM education, though not everybody totally understands that you have to do something different than what we've done in the past. So often when people say we need more STEM, they mean take another math course, take another science course. Right. What we have to do is something fundamentally different, and that is introduce this idea of engineering design into the schools. The main difference being that science is about discovering the natural world, use the scientific method. Engineering is about the human-designed world. In other words, engineering uses what's called the engineering design process to solve problems of society, to bring new value to society. And that's what innovation is about.
And that piece of it is what seems to be missing from so much of our work. And Lally, at Oceana Sensor, you and your colleagues in this technology realm really focus on the idea of innovation. You're having to go offshore to get a lot of it.
We're extraordinarily reliant on tech-savvy employees these days, and the projections for that are going to get, even greater. The need for qualified employees, and I think this issue, especially for our region, is exacerbated by the fact we've got so many defense contractors here. Those folks require U.S. citizens to do the work that those companies are doing for the government. And it's not an option in many cases to go shop offshore to fill those spots. And so this is really an important issue, I think, in our community, where we can help ourselves develop a workforce, help our kids, and satisfy our own needs in the business realm. Yeah.
And we've got some examples from around the state we can take a look at. We sent our producer, Danny Epperson, on assignment to check out 2 schools outside of Hampton Roads that illustrate just what we're talking about. First, we take you to the Math Science Innovation Center. It's a regional program in Richmond that's halfway through its 10-year strategic plan to develop 21st century learning curves for Virginia schools.
Fractal geometry, nanoscience, engineering, environmental modeling and simulation, and the cyber learning.
These are the areas not included in the Virginia Standards of Learning, areas that the Math Science Innovation Center in Richmond is charged with focusing on for students at all grade levels.
The Math Science Innovation Center is a 43-year-old consortium. It consists of 8 school divisions, K-12 school divisions in the Central Virginia area. Our mission is to be the innovator, incubator, and advocate of 21st century skills.
43 years old, but 5 years ago changed its focus.
We were charged as an organization to no longer focus on the standards of learning as our core mission. We were charged with focusing on the future.
Science, technology, engineering, and math, or STEM education. It's about moving students from a 20th century to a 21st century curriculum content. It's important to recognize that STEM is more than math and science.
Technology is different. Technology is change. We don't teach technology for content. We teach technology to teach how to be adaptive, to learn how to teach ourselves.
Technology not only helps students and scientists understand the natural world, it is fundamentally hands-on and can lead students to apply principles of engineering design, math, and science to solve problems and to innovate for society's needs in the human design world.
When we teach students technology, we teach them how to adapt, how to change, how to learn to change, how to learn to teach themselves.
One of the classrooms at the center is called the Fractal Keys Room. In this virtual classroom of sorts, teachers can change the media to match the subject matter, like nanotechnology.
Things like the atomic force microscope that just weren't around in the 50s. And additionally, things like computers and our computing technologies, they're all using all of these nano applications to develop smaller and smaller computers, to develop liquid crystal displays that are able to do things that are just amazing that we couldn't even consider doing 20 years ago.
Another focus area, fractal geometry. That's taking measurement one step further.
We can take fractal geometry and we can measure the roughness or the complexity of a coastline. And from that they can predict erosion patterns. They can measure mountains, things that we weren't able to do before.
David Ryan is department chair for secondary math and science education. He also leads the center's Engineering Fellows program. Attending teachers are immersed in engineering concepts related to coursework and then carry these concepts back to their school divisions.
Very often what you see are you're learning knowledge, but you're not applying that knowledge. And in the design and build method, in the engineering concept, that's the whole goal, is to be able to apply knowledge and solve problems and do that in a practical way.
Taking that step in the submersive world of learning by doing. In Christine Vester's middle school math class, one of the activities involves a virtual trip to the ski slopes.
One of the engineering activities that I've been working on with students is developing a zip line. You're on a mountain, you've been skiing with some friends, one of your friends is injured. We have these different materials around us where we need to create a zip line that will get us to the next elevation where ski patrol can help us.
And even the simplest of stories can offer dynamic lessons using engineering concepts. For first graders, Huff and Puff uses the Three Little Pigs story to teach weather impact and insulation properties.
The teacher reads the story of the Three Little Pigs and they talk about the construction of the houses, and the students are placed in groups and they actually build each of the houses. We used simulated weather conditions to test the strength of each of the houses. And here we have our wolf, and we test a tornado happening and they see which house is able to withstand.
For What Matters, this is Danny Epperson.
Wow, that's a little bit far away from test tubes and beakers and the like.
Yeah, I think that the really nice thing about the Math Science Innovation Center, they used to be called the Math Science Center, and whenever you went up Interstate 64 to Richmond, you would see this sign. In 2005, as Julia Cawthorn, the director, said, they were charged by their board. The board's made up of local superintendents, local school board members, and technology business leaders with doing something beyond the SOLs. They felt the SOLs were not providing the right education for kids in math and science.
I want to stop you there because that's an important point. How did that school board, those school boards, get to the place where they decided, you know what, the SOLs are not getting it done? How did they come to that conclusion?
I spoke to some of the board members, and they just observed what was being taught, and they knew this was not appropriate, especially the technology business.
I think that's pretty amazing. I think that's a pretty engaged board.
It's a good example of a community coming together and deciding for themselves what's important.
No kidding.
Yeah.
No kidding. So they came together and they said, look, the SOLs aren't getting done. We need to do. So you all figure out how to do a new thing.
So they said, let's do a strategic plan. They took a year, did it right with a facilitator, and they found 5 or 6 areas: nanotechnology, engineering design, modeling and simulation, fractals, some new type of math. So it's not just engineering, but it's math and science and engineering, just some things that are 21st century related that you did not find in the SOLs.
Okay, now that's the scary part of this, because the things that you just mentioned, including the fractals and the modeling and simulation, not only weren't in the SOLs, it sounds like there was almost an effort to resist putting them in there. Is that too strong?
So no, I don't think that's too strong. I think that just recently the SOLs in Virginia, science SOLs, were reviewed. Every 7 years they do a review. In 2010, they just passed what the new SOLs will be through 2017. The Math Science Center, I think you heard say that advocacy is one of their roles. So they advocated for things like the stuff they're doing to the state board. They had written a line about nanotechnology for the chemistry course to learn about atomic force microscopes and other technologies that help you learn about things at the subatomic level that we've been doing now for 25 years. That line was actually a standard that was put into the initial draft, but then in the final approval just 3 weeks ago, it was taken out, and the department recommended they not teach that in chemistry, not teach nanochemistry.
Hold on, not teach something that has been a fact of our lives for 25 years.
That's correct. With no reason given, so I can't tell you why they did that. I heard from a board member or two that the chemistry teachers were against doing this, but of course the Math Science Innovation Center has chemistry, and they're a K-12 group. They have chemistry teachers. So I don't quite understand why that was done.
That must have been very frustrating for you.
Yeah, that's frustrating, yes.
Rick Lally, as you hear that kind of a story, if you're talking about science that's been around for 25 years, it's kind of hard to imagine that we have a circumstance in which there's resistance to including that in what we are going to call the standards of learning, which, by the way, everyone who talks about the standards of learning clearly says the standards are just that. They're a base level, ground level approach. They're not supposed to be the be-all, end-all.
Exactly. You know what? This problem's just going to get worse over time. I mean, technology is accelerating so quickly. And you've got a system, an education system that doesn't change very rapidly whatsoever.
So how do you go about fixing it? I mean, I think a piece of it is that those boards were pretty engaged to have come together. I mean, that's an amazing thing in itself, I think.
It's the opportunity is for us in the community to get engaged, to take control, and make it happen. At some point, you got to understand, you got to make a decision what's important to you and where you're going to put your effort. And this entire thing is under our control. It's under parents' control, it's under business control, it's under the superintendent's control, and it's under the city, councils, legislators. It's all completely could be managed directly right here in Hampton Roads.
And I know you're trying to work on some of those issues through the Technology Council, through some of the other agencies and companies in the region that care a lot about this, not just because it's good to care about STEM issues, science, technology, engineering, and math, but because this is a business imperative too. We really have that before us.
Exactly. This is such a great example of where we in business can help ourselves. We don't need to be taxed more by Richmond or by DC in order for them to solve this problem. We can take our resources, our mentors, we can take our charitable giving, and we can take it right to our schools and our community and work with them to develop these programs.
I know that you're working on a lot of those efforts. How is that going? I mean, what sort of reception are you getting, and how is that turning out?
It's surprisingly been slow. I mean, one of the things I'm trying to tackle with Jim and a group of other folks is that, I see the business community here acting in a very individualistic fashion.
Okay.
It's, what happens is as a business community, we don't really have our act together and a strategic plan of how we could all strategically invest to greater gain. Many businesses are participating, here and there and doing what they can, but it's really sort of a catch-as-catch-can, type of environment, and we could be doing so much better.
Yeah, I think Rick makes a good point. We have schools in the area that are just terrific, doing wonderful, wonderful things, but it's uneven. Not all schools are doing that. And what the SOLs can provide, or something like the SOLs, is that all schools come up to some level. So 3 years ago, I had the opportunity to lead some panels sponsored by the Virginia Secretary of Education and NASA. And we took practicing physicists, scientists, and engineers, looked at the SOLs in physics, chemistry, and engineering in the state, and did a gap analysis, made recommendations about where they're lacking, what they could be. We took people from university professors to government lab researchers to industry folks, because that's the whole range from basic research through development, through manufacturing and operations, and asked them to come together and not talk about advanced science or advanced engineering, but what do children need to just participate in the political, economic, social, and technological world of the 21st century. In other words, what do kids need to be citizens of the Commonwealth in the 21st century? And among the recommendations, well, one of the findings was that our current program of SOLs that we were going to redo this year was really dated to the 1960s. We called it Sputnik-era science. We still talked about cathode.
This was the one that we were going to be redoing in this 7-year cycle.
This is the one we just redid. So things like cathode ray tubes, TV picture tubes were in there as something you had to learn, which led one physics book to say the cathode ray tube.
Digital television.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay,
well,
a
2002 edition of a book.
Yeah.
A cathode ray tube is a central element of the television set, because they had to cover cathode ray tubes because that was a standard. Now, I will say Virginia took that out in the latest version, so cathode ray tubes has been scratched, but they did not put in transistors, LCDs, LEDs, integrated circuits. These things that are in the 21st century have not been added in yet. They did not put in, though it was recommended, they put in plasmas as a fourth state of matter. So we still do just solids, liquids, and gases, even though plasmas have been around of interest since we first re-entered the atmosphere and lost radio contact with the mercury capsule back in the 60s. So and plasmas are in your TV set, plasmas are in neon signs. So we don't have that yet for all kids. So as Rick says, Hampton Roads really needs to come together and teach the kids in this region what it is they really need to know.
So what I hear you saying, and I don't want to paraphrase you, so you tell me if I'm too far out here, but what I hear you saying is, look, they may be standards of learning, but they shouldn't be standard for this community and for most communities. So we need to come together in this community, figure out we need children in this community to learn to live and work and stay here if they wanted to do that, and be marketable employees.
We've got some great specialty, high-paying jobs that are going to need to be filled in this area, modeling simulation being a great example.
No kidding.
Why can't it be our own kids, you know, returning from wherever they go to school, if it's local at ODU or William and Mary or wherever, or, you know, if they go out west a little bit, they should still have a great job right back here.
Well, we took you to the Math Science Innovation Center, and engineering, as we've been talking, is the parent of innovation in that regional program. Now let's take a look at one elementary school that's actually putting the engineering method into its curriculum. It's Clover Hill Elementary in Midlothian, Virginia. And a gym teacher there turned the entire school's way of learning, around, and now it seems the kids can't get enough of it. Once again, our producer, Danny Epperson.
Inside Clover Hill Elementary in Midlothian, Virginia, just outside Richmond, teachers are mixing things up for their students, but it's actually allowing them to learn more effectively. Cindy Jones is a physical education teacher at Clover Hill. A few years ago, she took a children's engineering class at James Madison University. Jones then put those ideas into action and combined engineering methods with exercise to energize her students. She uses everything from closed circuit relays, conductors, and pulleys.
I'll never forget when one of them was on the scooter pulling themselves in with a pulley, and they said, "Oh, now I get it." And I said, "What?" And they said, "Pulley because you pull." Well, when you see it on a piece of paper, you don't realize that you pull with the pulley because it just doesn't connect. But when you start pulling yourself in, the light comes on.
Jones is also president of the Virginia Children's Engineering Council. She shared her award-winning ideas with other teachers at Clover Hill, and they're now part of the total elementary school experience there.
I think that'll hold all the kisses.
One of the more popular projects for students in math and science, boat building. Students on different grade levels are given design briefs and, using certain criteria, must create a boat that will float and carry cargo.
So it's the science and the math and the engineering and the technology of building. So really that's a perfect STEM project for pulling everything in. It's sort of sophisticated art for children, only it's truly engineering.
Even in art class, students at Clover Hill are using math. After a trip to Jamestown, the students returned to build their own colonial homes using clay and applied math concepts.
Today, in fact, we were measuring and stuff, and we were talking about parallel lines, and someone was like, oh, we were talking about this in geometry. So that's exciting that they're connecting the different classes.
And over in Marianne Kirschberg's class, math and science students are learning about symmetry with an art lesson about medieval stained glass windows.
Yeah, they even told me science was fun on Fridays.
Classes at Clover Hill harness the current SOL requirements, but these innovative teaching methods dig a little deeper.
And in the long run, it allows them to teach in more depth because they're not isolating everything. They're able to not just get the breadth of the SOLs, but one of the complaints about SOLs in the state of Virginia has been that there's not a depth of learning when people go to teach, that there's not enough time to teach.
That's one place I feel like we're missing the boat, no pun intended, but where we are not utilizing all of our resources the way we can. There's so much out there that these children can be up on their feet, out of their seat, without having to sit and learn. It's been proven that they need to be moving and learning, and whether it's in a PE class or whether it's hands-on building stained glass windows or the colonial houses or whatever, they are so excited about that, and that makes learning not only fun, exciting.
As for the teachers at Clover Hill, this collaboration is also creating a professional learning community at the school.
This has provided us with a vehicle for the teachers to see the interconnectedness of knowledge and learning, and also for our children to see it. So they don't see things in isolation anymore. They see it as part of a whole.
For What Matters, this is Danny Epperson.
So we sent Danny across the state to find some of these programs, but Hampton Roads is not without STEM initiatives in some of its schools. For example, the Starbase Victory Center in Portsmouth, their design program is open to all 4th, 5th, and 6th graders in the entire city of Portsmouth. And Rick will tell us more about that. Rick, what's going on here? This is the Starbase in Portsmouth, and it looks like this is one of those situations where they're really putting some of these actions into school, which gets to what we were talking about earlier, about this idea that you have to make it interesting at some level.
Yeah, that's, I think that's at the baseline, one of the major benefits of these STEM initiatives is the effort to make it interesting to the kids to learn, and to learn by doing. You heard that, I think, in the earlier clip, with just a classic need, I think, in our education system. And, you know, there's no reason in the world that any of us should be sitting around saying, oh, I hate math, I hate technology.
You mean the reason it took us a year and a half to get to this show, Jim Batterson?
I know
science, it makes my head hurt.
You know, all our viewers out there are saying exactly that. Oh, I hated that class, right? But the point is, we're so reliant on it right now. There isn't any one of us that couldn't live without their computer and Facebook and being able to text message and have your cell phone. So there are skills every one of us needs to get by. We all need to understand something about how the internet works. We all need to understand how to prevent getting viruses on our computer by, you know, we all need to understand how to communicate properly now that we're...
How to be innovative.
Yeah. And I think these things are, everybody can really benefit tremendously from a baseline exposure to an interesting program steeped with technology.
Go ahead,
yeah, so I was just going to say, in this everyone is the key. Not only is Starbase open to all 4th, 5th, and 6th graders, but all of them participate.
That's a great
They don't choose. So what we had
today
is
not about gifted education, it's about everybody
We
education.
had 3 examples of programs that are inclusive of all students. And so the K-5 Children's Engineering, it's free. You can get it off the web. Just Google Virginia Children's Engineering. There are PDF files you can download on to integrate engineering design activities by grade level to the SOLs.
Wow.
Project Lead the Way.
So, and we'll put some of those resources up, but I guess the thing I get left with, we only have very few minutes left, very few seconds left probably. If somebody hears this and says, you have got to be kidding me, we're teaching 50-year-old science, what in the world? What do you think individual citizens can do? And then, Rick, I want to ask you about the business community, but people are going to be really shocked to see this.
Well, I think the first thing is that the SOLs are put forward by the Department of Education, which is a staff function, and approved by the State Board of Education, which are citizen representatives appointed by the governor. So you can go to your State Board of Education representative from this area or anyone you know, there are 9 of them from around the state, and say, look, I'm very concerned about this, and let the board know they're the policy-making body. Just like local school boards, you go to your school board member, they make policy.
Very few seconds left. Rick, what about the business community?
Well, get involved.
We're
the Tech Council, and in fact, we're putting a group together that's inclusive of virtually every association in town that should have a stake in interest in this.
Is that a different name?
No, it'll be led by Tech Council. We've actually got, it's an ad hoc group.
Got it.
And we can make the plan.
We have to go so much in half an hour. I hope you've enjoyed the program. We'll come back to this issue again. And thanks for watching. This is What Matters.